In the Altai Mountains of Siberia, at an elevation of approximately 700 meters, there is a limestone cave called Denisova. People have known it for a long time. Local inhabitants used it as a shelter. 18th century hermit Denis lived in it, giving the cave its name. Soviet archaeologists began systematic excavation in 1977. For 30 years, it was a productive but not extraordinary archaeological site, yielding stone tools, animal bones, and occasional fragments of human remains. In 2008, excavators in the east chamber of the cave found a fragment of bone approximately 3 centimeters long. It was identified as a distal manual phalanx, the tip of a finger. It had been preserved in the cold, dry sediment of the cave for approximately 50,000 years. The fragment was sent to Svante Pääbo's ancient DNA laboratory at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig. Pääbo's team had recently demonstrated the ability to recover ancient DNA from Neanderthal bones. The Denisova finger bone was an opportunity to apply the same techniques to another ancient human remain. The mitochondrial DNA from the fragment was sequenced in 2010. The result was not what anyone expected. The sequence was neither Neanderthal nor modern human. It was something else, something that had diverged from the lineage leading to Neanderthals and modern humans approximately 1 million years ago. A previously unknown human population, identified from 3 centimeters of finger bone, found in a cave in Siberia. This was the discovery that the 2010 Nature paper announced. A new branch of the human family, known entirely from the genetic material in a single finger. The Denisova cave is not sealed. It is an active archaeological site, excavated every summer by researchers from the Institute of Archaeology and Ethnography of the Siberian branch of the Russian Academy of Sciences. The cave has multiple chambers, the main chamber, the south chamber, and the east chamber, all of which are actively investigated. What makes the cave extraordinary is not restricted access. What makes it extraordinary is the preservation conditions. The cold, dry, stable climate of the Altai region has preserved ancient DNA in the cave sediments at a quality and depth that is almost unparalleled in the archaeological record. The DNA from the finger bone was extraordinarily well preserved. It yielded a genome that could be sequenced to a depth comparable to modern genomes. The full nuclear genome from the Denisova 3-finger bone was published in 2012. It was sequenced to a coverage of 30 times, meaning each position in the genome was read an average of 30 times, producing a sequence of extraordinary reliability. We know the Denisovan genome more precisely than we know the genomes of many living people. The individual whose finger bone was found was female, between 13 and 30 years old at death, and had brown eyes, brown hair, and dark skin. She was right-handed. These details are inferred from the genome, from the specific genetic variants that correlate with these physical and behavioral traits in living humans. We know what she looked like. We do not know what she called herself, what language she spoke, or what she thought. We have her genome, but not her name. The asymmetry between what genetics can recover and what archaeology cannot is one of the defining features of the Denisovan discovery. The nuclear genome analysis confirmed and extended the mitochondrial finding. The Denisovans were a distinct population of archaic humans, related to Neanderthals but separate, having diverged from the Neanderthal lineage approximately 400,000 years ago. They had their own evolutionary history, their own adaptations, their own population structure. And they had interbred with modern humans. The genome analysis showed that the populations of East Asia, Southeast Asia, and Australasia carry between 0 and 6% Denisovan ancestry, a contribution that varies significantly across different populations. Melanesians, the indigenous peoples of Papua New Guinea and neighboring islands, carry the highest known proportion of Denisovan ancestry, approximately 5 to 6%. 5 to 6% of Melanesian ancestry is Denisovan. The Denisovans who contributed this ancestry are the same population as the individual whose finger bone was found in Siberia. The people of Papua New Guinea are, in a specific and measurable genetic sense, partly Siberian in their ancestry. This geographic distribution created a puzzle. The Denisovan remains have been found in Siberia, but the people who carry the most Denisovan ancestry are in Southeast Asia and Australasia, thousands of kilometers from Siberia. This means the Denisovans were not a local Siberian population. They were widespread across Asia, from Siberia to Southeast Asia, at a minimum. The interbreeding must have occurred in Southeast Asia or in the region between Southeast Asia and Australasia, the territory that modern humans were crossing when they settled Australia and New Guinea at least 65,000 years ago. At that time, Denisovans were present in the region. Modern humans and Denisovans met, and they reproduced. In 2018, the Denisova cave yielded its most extraordinary specimen. In the same east chamber where the finger bone was found, researchers recovered a fragment of bone, Denisova 11, approximately 2.5 centimeters long, from a layer dated to approximately 90,000 years ago. The ancient DNA from the fragment was sequenced. The result, published in Nature in 2018, was something that the researchers described as a complete surprise. The individual was a first-generation hybrid. Her mother was a Neanderthal, her father was a Denisovan. Not descended from a hybrid lineage, not carrying traces of ancient interbreeding in a mixed population. First generation. Her mother was a Neanderthal, her father was a Denisovan, and she was their child. She died in a cave in Siberia approximately 90,000 years ago. We know her parents' species. She has been given the informal name Denny. Denny's Neanderthal mother came from a population more closely related to Neanderthals in Europe than to the Neanderthals who had previously been found in Denisova cave. This means Denny's mother's people had migrated from Western Eurasia to the Altai region. Denny's father was a Denisovan, but his genome showed evidence of Neanderthal ancestry in his own background. Previous interbreeding between Neanderthals and Denisovans had produced a Neanderthal genetic contribution in the Denisovan population. Denny's father carried this ancestral Neanderthal contribution. Denny carried it twice, once from her father's Denisovan line and once from her mother's direct Neanderthal parentage. Denny was not an anomaly. She was the product of a world in which Neanderthals and Denisovans met and reproduced, routinely enough that populations of each carried genetic ancestry from the other. The Denisova cave was a meeting place for at least two archaic human populations who were apparently able and willing to reproduce across the species boundary. The artifacts complicate the picture further. The layers of the Denisova cave that contain Denisovan remains also contain artifacts that, by conventional understanding, should not have been there. A chlorite bracelet, a polished stone bracelet made from chlorite with a drilled hole, was found in a layer dated to approximately 50,000 years ago, associated with Denisovan remains. Polished stone jewelry with a precision-drilled hole in a layer attributed to a population that conventional models placed at a lower level of cognitive sophistication than modern humans. The drilling of the hole required a rotary drilling technique, a technique that was not supposed to exist in the archaeological record of Siberia 50,000 years ago. The hole in the bracelet shows traces of high-speed rotation, consistent with a drilling technique that conventional models attribute to the Upper Paleolithic modern human toolkit. The conventional response to this finding has been to question the stratigraphic association, to suggest that the bracelet may have been made by modern humans and found its way into older layers through post-depositional movement. This is a legitimate methodological concern. Stratigraphic mixing at ancient sites is a real problem. But the bracelet is not alone. A needle made from bird bone, precisely shaped, with a small drilled eye, was found in the same general layers. A pendant made from mammoth ivory. Multiple ochre-stained objects suggesting the use of pigment for purposes beyond simple decoration. These objects, if their stratigraphic attribution is correct, and the excavation team has defended it rigorously, represent a level of technological and cognitive sophistication in the Denisovan occupation of the cave that challenges the conventional view of archaic human capabilities. The phrase that the video's premise uses, a species that shouldn't exist yet, is not about the Denisovans failing to appear in the timeline. It is about the cognitive and technological capabilities that the artifacts suggest. A population that conventional models placed in a stage of cognitive development that should not have produced polished stone jewelry with precision-drilled holes appears to have produced exactly that. The conventional model of human cognitive evolution places the development of symbolic behavior, personal ornaments, pigment use, complex tool manufacture in the Upper Paleolithic, associated primarily with anatomically modern humans in Africa and Europe from approximately 45,000 years ago. The Denisova cave artifacts push this timeline back, in Siberia, in a population that was not anatomically modern. The alternative, that the Denisovans acquired these technologies through contact with anatomically modern humans, is possible but not required by the evidence. The stratigraphic dating of the artifacts places them at a time when the presence of anatomically modern humans in Siberia is not definitively established. The technology may be Denisovan in origin. In 2019, the first confirmed Denisovan remains outside the Altai were announced. A fragment of jaw bone, the Zaya mandible, had been found in a cave on the Tibetan plateau in 1980. Protein analysis confirmed it was Denisovan. It dated to approximately 160,000 years ago. The Tibetan plateau is at an altitude of 4,000 meters above sea level. At 160,000 years ago, Denisovans were living at 4,000 meters altitude in conditions of severe oxygen deprivation. The genetic contribution of Denisovans to Tibetan populations, the EPAS1 variant that enables high-altitude survival, was not an incidental contact. It was the inheritance of a population that had been living at altitude for a very long time. The Denisovans were high-altitude specialists. They had physiological adaptations to low-oxygen environments that took hundreds of thousands of years to develop. When modern humans arrived in Tibet and encountered the Denisovans or their descendants, they acquired these adaptations through interbreeding. Today's Tibetans can live at altitude because of inheritance from people who were living at altitude before modern humans arrived in Asia. In 2023, sediment DNA analysis from the Baishia Karst cave on the Tibetan plateau detected Denisovan DNA in cave sediments dating as recently as 40 to 50,000 years ago. Denisovans were on the Tibetan plateau until approximately the time modern humans were arriving in East Asia. The potential for their encounter with modern humans was not ancient history by then. And in 2024, sediment DNA analysis from the Denisova cave itself, not bone, but ancient DNA preserved in the cave sediment, extended the Denisovan occupational record in the cave to approximately 200,000 years ago. The cave was occupied by Denisovans for at least 150,000 years. 150,000 years, the same cave, the same population's descendants, longer than anatomically modern humans have been in Europe. What the Denisova cave has produced in 15 years of ancient DNA analysis is a revision to the human family tree that no model predicted. A new branch of humanity, known only from fragmentary remains. A first-generation hybrid between two archaic human species. Evidence for sophisticated technology attributed to a non-modern human population. High-altitude adaptations that were transmitted to modern humans and are functioning in Tibetan bodies today. All of this from a cave that is not sealed. That is actively excavated every summer. That produces new findings with a consistency that suggests the record it contains is not yet exhausted. The cave has 4 chambers in common usage. The main chamber, the south chamber, the east chamber, and a smaller 4th gallery that has yielded fewer published results. The 4th chamber is not forbidden or sealed. It is less extensively excavated than the others. The archaeological record it may contain is simply not yet fully explored. The real reason researchers approach the less excavated sections of the Denisova cave with care has nothing to do with forbidden knowledge. It has to do with stratigraphic integrity. The undisturbed sediments of the cave contain an irreplaceable temporal record. Every layer is a frozen moment. Every layer disturbed without complete documentation is a moment lost forever. The excavators work centimeter by centimeter. Every grain of sediment is processed for microfossils, pollen, plant material, and now ancient DNA. The cave is being read rather than dug. The process is slow because speed would destroy the record that makes the cave unique. The Denisovans should not be understood as a primitive or failed branch of humanity. They survived in Siberia and Tibet through at least 2 ice ages. They developed technology that may have been as sophisticated as that of contemporary anatomically modern humans. They contributed adaptations to living people that enable survival in the most physiologically demanding environment on Earth. They were not a failed experiment. They were a success for hundreds of thousands of years. They did not fail to become modern humans. They were something else. Something that contributed to what modern humans became, particularly in the regions where modern humans encountered them. In the cold, dry air of the Denisova cave, 200,000 years of sediment are waiting. The team returns each summer. Each summer, the layers yield something. Most of what they yield will be ordinary, animal bones, pollen, unremarkable stone flakes. Occasionally, something extraordinary. The cave is not sealed, it is open. The question it contains is not forbidden. It is simply not yet fully answered. The Denisovans existed. They were sophisticated. They contributed to us. And there are still layers in the cave that have not been read.